Chris's Book Reviews. Today, I shall be talking about a life-changing book I've read multiple times. And before I summarize the ideas, or golden nuggets, if you will, I would like to speak about the author, Dale Carnegie. In short, Dale Carnegie was an interpersonal genius, the founder of the self-help movement that brought radical change to people in both their business and community relations. His ideas were elegant to the point where anyone could master them, but unfortunately, few had them. And because of this, he wrote the world-renowned book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. In essence, his work is a guidebook that teaches the nuances of networking, and it has sold approximately 15 million copies over 75 years. I can say from personal experience that I was socially inept. However, after reading this book, I can now network very smoothly and with great confidence. The two parts that I'll be covering today are techniques when handling people and how to make people like you. For techniques when handling people, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Basically, don't force anyone to do anything. Convince them to do something. If you condemn a person with malicious judgment for doing a bad action or a bad job, that person will most likely not change, and even if they do change, it'll only be a temporary fix where that person ends up resenting you. Instead, what you should do is reward a person for their good behavior and good actions by saying, "Oh, you did a great job here." And they will most likely do that job again for that same amount of praise. But this ties into the second skill. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Now, this skill is great when motivating people and giving constructive criticism. Because whenever someone gives appreciation on a task that's well done, the person who is praised will keep improving. And another interpretation of these two skills is if you want someone to change and you just criticize them over and over and over again, that would just build, in me at least, a rebellious person who would do anything but change and just start resenting that person constantly telling me to change. Rather than if someone encouraged me on my good behavior, I would at least say, "Oh, okay, maybe I should start doing this more so I can get that approval that everyone desires," because that's a universal feeling we have of approval. And lastly, another interpretation of give honest and sincere appreciation, the second skill, is don't let your mood determine how you judge someone's actions, as in give your criticism that you would give again. So don't let your emotions control your judgment. And the third and final skill in the techniques when handling people part of the book is arouse in the other person an eager want. I feel like I can best convey what the author means through an example that I have performed in my personal life. I remember having a desire to play board games with my family as a kid. However, when I asked if my dad or my mom wanted to play a game with me, my family usually didn't feel like it, or they were just too tired, or they had better things to do, or they were just too busy. So, in response to this, after reading this book, I placed a board game I wanted to play later that day on the center of the coffee table in the living room. And later, when people came back from work, they saw the board game, and both my mom and dad proposed we play a game. And I said, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'd love to." And that afternoon, we played that board game for 2 hours, and I was overall really, really happy. So make it seem like it's their idea, when in actuality, it's what you want to do. Okay, now, moving on to the second set of skills, how to make people like you. First, become genuinely interested in other people. And I try to do this in my conversations by notifying a person that I'm giving them my full attention. I simply reply with a piece of information the person gave me, and then I either ask a question or give them a statement starting with, "Tell me more, go on," or "as you were saying about," and the conversation just flows naturally. For example, if my friend was talking about, oh, he just got back from basketball camp and he was going up against this really competitive team, I would say, "Oh yeah, so what happened next with that team? Were you winning or losing?" Or I would just try to let that person know, okay, I'm paying attention, I'm genuinely curious about what happened. Please tell me more. Moving on to the second skill. Be sure to smile. And I don't mean a soft smile. I mean a genuinely eye-crinkling smile where there's no doubt that that person knows that you're happy or at least interested in what they're saying. Because the number one thing when it comes to smiling is the eyes. If they're crinkling, then they know that you are happy or at least paying attention. And if not, then it kind of looks forced. So you don't have to be that aware of it, but whenever you're having a conversation with someone, just be sure to smile, and overall that person will be much more trustworthy of you. Now, for the third skill, remember a person's name, because that is by far the sweetest and most important sound that person can hear. And that applies for all languages. Once in the conversation, if you can place the person's name casually, then that person will not only pay more attention to you, but also respect you way more. This is especially good for first impressions. And for those of you who are not great at remembering names, that's alright. I'm not that great either. But what I usually do, if I know I'm going to see someone that I haven't seen in a while or I just met and I forgot their name, I either ask a really close friend of mine or I look them up on social media. I try to do anything to get that person's name. But sometimes I enter a conversation and I'm unsure about the person's name. So what I do is I just wait it out, and sometimes they reveal to me their name and sometimes they don't. But even if you have a conversation without knowing a person's name, that's okay. You could always just call them by a funny nickname. And as long as it's somewhat relatable or funny, you should be fine. And you'll probably learn their real name after giving them a nickname. So aside from that, the fourth skill is active listening. And what I usually do is I prompt the person to talk about his or herself way more than I do. And what I mean by that is I just say a few sentences throughout the conversation and they throw paragraphs at me. And I just let them go on and on and on. And people love to talk about themselves. And active listening, it's somewhat simple, but before I talk about some skills associated with active listening, I want to talk about poor listening skills. And these aren't really skills, these are just traps. A poor listener looks at his or her phone instead of the person speaking, replies with one or no words to a paragraph of information that the speaker just gave them, and anything else that one would consider rude in society. Alternatively, there's a good or active way to listen. A person who does this has great eye contact, asks questions when appropriate, shows attention through body language, and defers any initial judgment about the content being talked about. And body language, going back to that skill, it can be anything from your feet facing the person to you just having your torso pointed at that person and you looking them in the eye. As long as you do those big three things for body language, you're set. So, in short, always have great active listening skills and people will love to have conversations with you. a great conversationalist. Now, for the fifth skill, talk in terms of the other person's interests. Basically, know your audience. If you're talking to a science fiction author, mention some popular books and they'll be able to relate with you most definitely. And if you're talking to a photographer, talk about, oh, what camera do you use? Be open-minded and get ready to learn. Because these conversations, you most likely learn the most. And this can also be applied to presentations as well. If you're giving a presentation about dinosaurs and you're a paleontologist, this is really a specific example, but I feel like it has some value to it. And you're talking to these children about dinosaurs who are 5, maybe 6 years old. Speak in very simplistic terms, but you wouldn't give the same discussion on dinosaurs to a college educated audience. Now, would you? So, in short, always know who you're talking to and be able to ask good questions and talk in the terms of the other person's interests. Now, for the last skill on how to make people like you. Make the other person feel important by being sincere. Whenever speaking to someone, you can do multiple things to make someone feel great in a conversation. Sincere tones, word choice, and body language all determine how you make the other person feel. If I were going to a mall or a party and I find a friend I haven't spoken to in months, to potentially build a relationship with this person, I would need to authentically make him feel great throughout the conversation. Because if I don't, I may not have a chance to chat with my friend for quite a long time. And we can all relate, because if someone was trying to have a conversation with you and they didn't make you feel important, then you would probably not want to talk to that person again. Because I know I wouldn't. And this concludes my first of 3 videos on how to win friends and influence people. To recap, techniques when handling people. First, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Second, give honest and sincere appreciation. Third, arouse in the other person an eager want. Now, how to make people like you. First, be genuinely interested in other people. Smile. Remember a person's name. Actively listen. Talk in the terms of the other person. And make the other person feel important. If you remember these skills, your relations with people will dramatically improve. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe.